Oh, it's got to be a little louder than that. Hello out there, and welcome to the No Shit Cast. I'm your host, Matt Frazier. Woo, got a new bushel of shit for us to talk about tonight. Joining me for tonight's soiree, as usual, none other than the great wizard of historical knowledge himself, Mr. Eric Smith. How are you tonight, Mr. Smith?
Oh, man, I am doing well.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yes.
Yeah, you're very happy lately, huh?
Yes.
It's good, cool stuff going on.
Yeah, good stuff everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good to hear that, man.
It is, yeah. Yeah, it really is, actually.
So, I got a bunch of articles lined up. I don't know, do we have any shout-outs or anything we need to do tonight?
To everybody that watches our show.
Just thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah. Just you crazy fuckers, just keep doing it. No, there is some. We've had a phone call today from. So there will be some breaking news. It looks like here coming up real soon. Some stuff I can't necessarily talk about right now. So that was a really interesting evening. So
I haven't got to be here for the phone call this time.
That was cool. Wasn't
yeah,
it
was.
Yeah. So. I got articles, but show question tonight. Did you have something you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I thought of something.
Oh, this could be dangerous.
Okay, so if you weren't the religion that you are currently,
okay,
even if that's atheism or whatever,
right?
Other than agnostic, because you can't really reply. But if you weren't the religion you were now, what religion would you like to be? Like, you couldn't be this religion. So if you were Christian, you couldn't be Christian. You had to be something else for some reason. What would you pick?
Oh man, that's a that's a deep question. The problem is I don't think I know enough about enough other religions. Because I was born and raised, Baptist Christian, mm-hmm. right? And even though I'm completely fascinated by other religions and I like to talk about them and read about them and learn about them as much as possible, I'm not sure, however, that I know enough about any of the other religions
to safely pick.
Yeah, I Morgan Freeman did this thing on I think it was on God. It was
I have that. I haven't watched it yet.
It's so good, right? Because
the origins of God or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I really enjoyed that. But there was one religion that really jumped out at me, and it was one that they don't really have a deity as much as they worship like an ideology, if I remember right. So like their holy symbols, this book, and that's kind of like where it ends.
They're like fanatical philosophers.
Kind of, yeah. That's kind of what I got. Yeah, I guess it's a way of looking at it.
They're really hip on that belief.
Like totally, and I'm not sure. It might have been. I mean, and here's where I'm going to get in trouble, and I don't want to offend anyone, so I apologize in advance. But I think for some reason I think it was Sikh, like SIKH or SIHK or something like that. But anyway, the foundations of the entire religion are like, loving each other and, taking care of people. And like, they have this really like, they worship this ideology of like peace and humanity and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, shit, man, if I had to pick something else, it would be something like that for sure. And again, if it's not the Sikh religion, I apologize to anybody who is. I'm just getting it. Maybe I'm getting my wires crossed. But there's a religion that sort of that's what they do, and the ideology is that higher sort of. But instead of creating a deity around it of any kind, like an enforcer, there's no enforcer. There's just the ideology where it's. Or overlord of any kind, there's just the ideology, and the ideology is to sort of like, not be fucking dicks to each other and treat people with respect, like all these higher tenets that pretty much revolve through all of the major religions. They just sort of broke it out in a book and said, we'll just worship this,
That makes sense, though. That does make sense on why you would like that. That's because that's very philosophical.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that you really like the philosophy of religion. I'm sitting here wondering what my answer would be. Is why I'm saying that.
Yeah, that's why you were letting me babble on endlessly over here about this.
Well, I'm just listening to the reason why and thinking it makes sense. Like knowing you as I do, I think that would be something that would fit you, and that you would be happy with. And I was thinking, well, what would that be for me? Mm-hmm. And I went through a lot. I think it'd probably be Judaism, possibly Zoroastrianism, but I'm thinking Judaism would probably be what I would pick.
Yeah.
I've always thought that was a really interesting religion and had a lot of structure to it, and of course is the predecessor of Christianity, so there's a bit of a familiarity with it to some degree, and I'm a big scholar on that particular topic, and so there's a lot that's familiar to me about that. If I had to,
so Judaism, yeah. Now, is there any specific sort of Orthodox?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, you have to go to classes and get a card and stuff. Like you can do it, like you can become officially Jewish, but you have to take like these classes, and eventually you get like a certificate or a card.
Yeah,
or
but you would, because you would love that, like having to memorize and learn all this.
It'd be a great opportunity.
You're right. Okay,
to read the Hebrew texts and
learn how to read Hebrew.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Which that's what all Hebrew children have to do once they're 12 years old. They have their bar mitzvah, and that essentially means that they have to commit their adult life to studying the Torah.
Right.
And that's part of what being Jewish is studying the Torah, no matter who you are. Whether you're just some normal dude or you're a rabbi.
It's so unpredictable. But I totally get it now that when you've said it now, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that fits you in some weird way,
right?
You German weird guy.
Wow. But yeah, I totally get it. It's from the standpoint of the best thing in the world to you would be being locked in a room full of dusty old books full of ancient knowledge.
Oh man,
you would be,
especially Gnostic Gospels. Bro, if I could just hang out and read Gnostic Gospels with rabbis, that would be awesome. Or like the Zoroastrial book, yeah, all good stuff. I mean, Jesus liked that. He would hang out with the rabbis.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
I would.
Yep. I do find a definite interest. Yeah, I mean, I get where you could find that would be really fun to do. Like, I think they should just fucking start. These guys should just start podcasts and stuff, man.
Well, from an anthropological standpoint too, I find some of the additions that they added to Judaism when it crossed over from Zoroastrianism to be interesting, like bathing in the mikvah and things like that. Anytime a Orthodox Jewish person would be tainted in some way, they would have to do this ceremonial ritual, like a bathing ritual.
Right. And the water is a big part of that religion, right?
And they had these like water containers in most villages and cities and stuff called mikvahs, and they were like public, so it was something that permeated their society. Everybody knew about it. It was like having a park, but if you were them, you'd also have a mikvah, maybe in a park and whatever.
Right.
So that's like one of those things that was added to the religion when they started to make themselves distinct from where they came from originally. Mm-hmm. It was a way of distinguishing. Just like when in Christianity they used the meal, the Passover meal, to represent Jesus Christ, with the wine being his blood and the bread being his flesh and stuff. That's like a recapitulation of the Judaic celebration for Exodus. They'd have a meal that basically celebrated Exodus for them.
Right.
And the Christians co-opted that and made changes to it. And one of the main changes they made to it was that in their version, the wine was really blood and the bread was really flesh. That's transubstantiation. And the Catholics still do that. That's what that's called when you take bread or a holy wafer in your mouth and then you believe that it literally becomes the flesh of Christ. That's transubstantiation. And Catholics, that's part of their practice and stuff. And that was an old Christian practice that was set up to distinguish that tradition and that meal and that ritual from what the Jewish people were doing, since they kind of, most of the first Christians were Jews that were converted into this new kind of Judaic situation that later became known as Christianity. So I find that all interesting. Okay.
Anyway. No, I'm down with that, man. I get it. It's funny that I always took the literal interpretation of that whole. This is that whole the verse. This is my body, and do this often in remembrance of me, kind of thing. Was taken too ritualistically in the sense that the way I interpreted that whole thing was, consume of the things I've taught you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see.
And do them often, and especially when you're breaking bread with your fellow human beings and stuff, and pass this stuff on, kind of thing. Like
that's a more Protestant view.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of like now you're talking about the division between the Protestants and the Catholics.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And
oh God, let's don't do
Catholic interpretation of the Bible and the Apocryphas are definitely a lot different than a lot of Protestant church interpretations of those same passages. And most Protestants don't practice transubstantiation, let alone that whole where you're eating the holy wafer.
Right.
So they don't generally do that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been to ones that do, though. It's strangely enough. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's out there. It's funny how many different interpretations of a single, how many different translations are there to begin with, right? There's hundreds and hundreds of
translations of the Bible. Yeah.
Yeah. Hundreds and hundreds of them. So but it's interesting how, they share some pretty straight up core tenets, but I don't know what that is. Ricky Gervais. But how different those interpretations can be overall.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Which is, the other thing is like how many people remain the religion they're born into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's extreme. I don't remember what the percentage is, but I remember the percentage was shockingly high. Not that I think everybody should go out and change their religion. I'm not.
No, but some of the people maybe did that because they were marrying into a family that was much stronger in their beliefs. Marrying into an Orthodox Jewish family, for instance.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
There's
that's just the reason why they have
Catholics kind of the same way. There are events.
Yes.
there are commitments.
And there's classes for both of them, for both Catholicism and Judaism for converting.
I used to hang out with this priest in the basement of a church.
Uh-huh.
And I was an adult, and he and I would drink, because they would have these events at the church, so they'd have it was like a big dinner hall in the basement. It was great, man. You got to eat all this phenomenal food and stuff. And I would hang out with this priest, and we would sit and drink port. He liked port, and I liked port. And we just both get smashed and talk theology and shit.
We need to get a priest on the show.
Yeah, that could be fun. I put that out there once before that I would be more than willing to have someone come in.
Yeah, I was going to ask some
any
people,
of the faiths. I don't mind. I find them all fascinating. Doesn't mean I believe literally the things that a lot of
you know what we need.
Believe,
we need a priest and a midget on the show. I mean to say together.
And we're done. That's the end of the no shit cast right there.
In one of our classes.
Wait, no, stop. We're going down this fucking road. Okay. A priest, and first of all, I don't think you can say midget
is a derogatory term. That's
it is
true.
an absolutely derogatory term, right? And you should be ashamed of yourself, Mr. Smith, regardless of how fucking funny that actually was. And off guard, it caught me.
Well, no, it all stems from I had taken a lot of history classes and read a lot of history texts and stuff, and
little people have to do
never in them.
Like I'm making now. This is derogatory too, little people.
No,
I can't stop.
That's how I found out that term was derogatory.
Really?
Yeah, because in all of those textbooks, I never seen one picture of little people, right? Like, I never seen no dwarves or anything like that, right? Never seen a picture. So one day in class, we were just talking about, like, the Constitution, and I raised my hand. I was like, asked my professor, I'm like, were there little people back in this time frame we're talking about? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, what do you mean? What do I mean? I mean, like, midgets. He's like, I don't think we can say that. I'm like, say what? He says midget. I'm like,
we can't.
We just both said that. Okay.
No, we both did. Yeah.
Okay.
Shit.
But he says I don't know. He says I've never seen any pictures. He says there's a paper in there. I said
there's a paper. Oh, in that subject.
Yeah.
Right.
So like I guess no one's done research.
No one's ever done the research on this.
In the Civil War period.
Why don't they show up in
before?
Well, everybody. Well, okay, God, I can't go
because
down
at
this
some-
road, man.
Well, no, I mean, at some point we came over, we had colonies and stuff, right? And the colonies develop up to a point where you have the Civil War, and in that time span, I ain't seeing no pictures of little people ever. And I mean, did they come over later? Or did it?
Well, they definitely existed.
Right.
They're written about it in
the
history.
Egyptian period, they're written about. The Egyptians
Well, no,
adored
because where do you think
little people.
those people that ended up in like circuses and traveling sideshows
America,
and
yeah.
stuff in America?
But I think that's what it is, man. I think that most of the information about them has been marginalized into
it absolutely
the
has.
entertainment.
Absolutely has.
So there probably is a lot of historical fact to uncover there. If anybody wants to do a paper.
So, if someone could really go deep. This is bizarre. Here we go, man. It is a fascinating topic in that sense, right?
And they may have done things.
What about that? Right.
Right, yeah. They could have not got credit for. I mean, women did things that they didn't get credit for.
So much later.
Black people did things that they didn't get credit for, you know.
Yeah, or ever.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Could have been the same thing with little people. You didn't see pictures of them except till, sideshow stuff.
The beginning of this whole thing, I thought that's
from religion to little people.
We're so done, and then you end up with this whole deep philosophical, like they're not being represented in history, bitches. Like power to the little people kind of thing.
And where else do you put that power?
How
other
did
than
this
the little
just
people?
happen?
I'm just saying these things weigh on my mind sometimes.
Oh my God!
Some days I can't go to sleep till I can figure out what happened to the little people in the Civil War period before.
I don't know, Mr. Smith. I don't have a good answer for that, and I think it's interesting as shit.
We have pictures of Asian people that were essentially indentured servants in a later period working on the railroad, and they were considered to be really low society at one point. Some of the first drug laws in California were made to combat the Asian people had settled out there from that period. Mm-hmm. But there's lots of history on them.
Mm-hmm. On them,
yeah.
But that's an entire race.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, gee, but not to marginalize
Nobody's
little people.
enslaving little people, I guess. Like, do you want this? No. Like, I guess they're not useful as indentured servants to the most part. But you'd think that they would be because they would still be able to, I don't know, do things.
I don't know now that you mention it, I don't know any sort of specific history, pro or con, that way.
Yeah.
Like I get, but in a sense, it's. I guess to me, they were just. I don't know. Now that you mention it, it's like, was there a persecution? Was there a sort of obvious?
Did you know that the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, adored little people? They venerated them.
Is that right?
One of their gods was.
Well, they miniaturized cats to bring them in the house. So anything miniaturized to them,
It's just like small things.
Making shit up over here.
I love it though. They miniaturized cats to bring them in the house. Oh,
I'm comparing little people to cats. There is no way I get out of this swamp. Eric Smith coming out of this not looking like a total douchebag.
No, you're fine. That's just funny.
Oh God. A priest and a midget walk into a bar. What?
One of them's very upset about not being represented in early American history.
Right.
The other one
is
very upset about the prolification of newly published Gnostic Gospels.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably wondering where the punchline is here. I am too.
What's this is a thing though.
What?
Newly published Gnostic Gospels?
Yeah, but I don't know if priests are upset about it. They probably are.
You might be making that up.
I'm just suggesting they could be.
I need to move.
You need to get that out of your face.
What am I doing here? I need to move the keyboard. Have you heard anything about these? There's stuff in the keyboard. About these Gnostic Gospels?
Have I heard any what?
Is there any information on them, or is this an actual thing? Newly discovered Gnostic Gospels?
Oh, I don't know about newly discovered, but there's a lot of books that's been published in the last 7 years about interpretations of Gnostic Gospels. I've read a bunch of them, and they're really interesting. It's like philosophy. It's like if you was to mix philosophy with Christianity.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost, and then a lot of them, to me, read like self-help guides.
That makes sense. The human condition is pretty consistent.
Yeah. And
right?
And some of them still trickle down in sayings and stuff like, let them that have ears listen. Like that's from the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And it's a phrase repeated often in that text, and that's something I've heard, in modern times.
For sure. Yeah. Again, I think it's archetypal.
It is, yeah. Open your mind.
Yeah.
Listen to the words I'm saying. Don't just refute them or argue them, but embrace them and try to understand them, because they're not meant to hurt you, and you can only accept or not accept them, kind of thing. In a way, very much a self-help guide.
But is that
for the ancient person?
Is that a Gnostic gospel?
Well, what?
Mary Magdalene?
Oh yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
so I don't get where the breakdown and all that stuff actually is.
Well, why
are we doing a whole show on religion?
I don't know. One of the articles might be part of that. The computer's done with too.
I kicked the power connector and just like shut everything down. So we're on. Yeah, I don't know. It's still booting up or something.
No, I think we just drifted into the conversation. But I don't know. I forget what you were asking me. Like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is one. The Gospel of St. Thomas. I think anything from the Nag Mahal library is a Gnostic gospel. The Dead Sea Scrolls are a Gnostic gospel. They're just a sect of either you would say neo-Jews or early Christians. They're the transition. They were one of the transitions.
Okay.
Most of the
sequential transitions or a type of, like, they're their own offshoot.
They're their own offshoot. Okay. And they died out.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why that's so Gnostic Gospels have only been uncovered and interpreted, in the
I was shocked, man. I saw a special one where they found those.
Mm-hmm. Like the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah. And 3% of that area has been archaeologically excavated. There's like hundreds of other caves.
The caves of Qumran are on the shores of the Dead Sea.
And they keep finding more jars with more artifacts, more pieces of parchment.
Now,
they're still finding this stuff.
Most of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the majority of them are just copies of the normal Gospels and Torah that we have. Yeah. But it's the different ones that we find occasionally that are the Gnostic Gospels. So, and Gnosticism is a Greek word that means wisdom. Right. So that whole idea of the Gospels, of the Gnostic Gospels, are that they're inner wisdom, sort of a thing.
That's very Zen.
Yeah, they put the God inside of you.
Okay.
And that's another aspect of them, that God is.
Well, that's definitely that's got roots in modern Christianity. Yeah, that God lives inside a person. Yeah, or lives in your heart and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, but it's a bit more, and it pushes you a bit more in that direction. Like, it really strays away from there being this external deity, and that this force is inside of you, more like a Holy Ghost kind of a force. And oddly enough, not that different than what devil worship, like from Anton LaVey, is that they call humanism. It was really called humanism, but then people said it was devil worshiping because they were doing away with the God. But it was saying that choice lies within you, that you are essentially a deity. That's just what Anton LaVey was saying, that you are a deity, and you have, as a human, and because you have intelligence, and there is no deities, that you have the right to be God and make these decisions. And of course, it's morally better for people if you're making better decisions and not just chaos and evil and destruction, right? But that there is no such thing as that being a moral sin. Only in the sense as how you perceive that as right or wrong. Right. It was kind of weird, man. So, but I mean, it's kind of close to that to some degree, I think, and the way it reads to me.
Remember that? I remember you telling me about that period of time in Greece where there was no priest class, and so
there were priests, but no priest class per se.
It was all based on philosophy, right? Like there
was priests of religions. But they didn't hold the same sort of authority and title, and they didn't form a class unto themselves, and it was worked out a bit differently.
Okay, that completely blows what I was going to ask you next. So that's a better clarification. I'm like, oh, okay, I misunderstood that then.
Yeah, like it wasn't something that you could.
So it wasn't a society devoid of religion and deity.
No,
per se.
No, it was a society that didn't embrace that there were separate people in their society that could only fulfill the function of being an intermediary between them and a deity.
Okay.
So they didn't have special people to be priests like most societies did. You either were or you weren't, but you weren't appointed. You couldn't climb a status and get there. There wasn't ranks or anything like that. You either did this thing or you didn't.
And that was okay.
Yeah, but in other places like in ancient Rome, there was there's like levels and
Yeah, for some reason I thought last time we talked about this, you had said that they sort of worshipped like philosophy was their main, or not worship, but philosophy was their main.
It was my opinion that because they were so strong in philosophy, it watered down their religious activities to the point where there was a bit more of a balance between philosopher and religion, philosopher and priest.
Okay.
Laity, philosopher, and priest had different meanings, I think, for the Greek people in ancient times than it did for other people in ancient times. Like in ancient Egypt, the priests were a class, and if you were in that class, you had certain rights and privileges and responsibilities, and it was a part of their social structure. Whereas the Greeks didn't really have that sort of a thing. It wasn't, and it wasn't like if they knew you were a priest, they would assume that you had a certain amount of money or a certain amount of people that followed you or a certain amount of authority. It was more like they were a mystic or something, and kind of a situation. They weren't organized in the same way that the priests were in Egypt. Like when Akhenaten went and tried to get rid of the priests and stuff, and eventually they rose back up and basically destroyed him and wiped his name off of all the artifact.
Yeah.
Like that was a society that was cohesive enough that they were able to mobilize against that situation and grab it back, where that didn't really exist in the ancient Greek period in that way.
Interesting. Oh, okay.
Yes, so now
we
we
got
got
articles, man. That was heavy. Wow, or deep. Anyway, okay, where's my article thing here? Okay, so we got a whole bunch of articles. We're not going to do all of them tonight. But this was one that I obviously picked because we talk about a lot of this kind of consciousness and all this sort of stuff on the show all the time. But this one comes from inverse.com. And it says almost near-death experiences, or no, almost all near-death experiences have these visions in common. So I was like, oh, we're definitely talking about this.
Yes, and should I preface this with anything?
Yeah, go ahead. If you feel like it, for sure.
I don't know. I guess it's depending on how many people have seen older shows, right? Because we talk about this a lot, and we've talked about the similarities between near-death experiences and OR, and how there's this crossover between that and people that take DMT, right? So there's three things: OR, people that take DMT, and near-death experiences. They all have the same description of the DMT people,
like very specifically, nearly the same type of experiences.
Yeah. Which, from what I understand, and I don't know if this will say the same things because I've not read this article, but generally they have this experience of leaving their body, being able to see things around them and the people around them at the time that this happens, and that they eventually leave the area that they are in, and they see a light in the distance that they typically head for.
That old tunnel.
Yeah, and before they get to that light, they typically say that they lose their self-identity, that they see people also around them that they recognize as deceased relatives, but they're also them. Like they lose their identity, and they describe the light either as the source of all love, or the source of all mathematics, or a city. Sometimes they describe it, but it's something that's complicated and that's giving energy or life to everything, and they drift to this area, and they stay in this area for an undetermined length of time. They can't tell how long they've been there, and then if they're revived, they come back, and the worst case scenario is that you're a vegetable and your higher brain functions don't work, but your soul is trapped in your body aware. The best case scenario is you get revived and you talk about your near-death experience, or you come off your high from DMT and you talk about this. But that's and most of this is there's some documentaries out there that you can verify some of this with, like DMT, the Spirit Molecule, is a documentary on Netflix concerning that substance.
Yeah, Joe Rogan's in that too.
Yeah.
I just listened to one of his podcasts. I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been a comedian that went to South America and did the whole ayahuasca thing. And and was talking to him about it, and he's never done it. Like she went. I think it might have been. Elder Millennial. What the hell's her name? Anyway, I can't think of her name right now, but she's a hilarious comedian. She did the whole thing. I think she went to South America and did ayahuasca and all this stuff because Joe Rogan told her to. He's never done it. It might not have been her. Eliza Schlesinger is her name. Anyway. Not many people have a brush with death and live to tell the tale, but those that have inched closer to the void even briefly come back with eerily similar tales. To discover why that might be the case, a team of scientists took a dive into the macabre earlier this year. The team found that in a sample of 1,034 adults from Norway, Denmark, and Germany, 10% of people reported having near-death experience. In turn, they also found that these experiences had several weird commonalities, including dark tunnels with bright lights, spiritual sensations, and conversations with the dead.
Yep.
These findings were originally presented at the meeting of the European Academy of Neurology in June 2019.
I'm just laughing because eventually it stacks up and they're like, well, we should probably talk about this with the doctors, about the brain doctors. We're going to look what's up with it.
What is going on here? Why does this drug make people simulate death, or this chemical make people simulate death? Why are all the
stories the same universally?
Yeah. In August 2019, they were published in the journal Peer J. I don't know what that is. In the study, the team rated near-death experiences on a scale of 1 to 10. How do you do that?
Dude, my near-death experience was awesome.
Right. With 0 being the worst near-death experience you've ever had.
Why'd you bring me back, you fucks?
And 10 being didn't want to come back, right?
Yeah.
In the study, 1 to 10, I already said that. Called the Grayson Near-Death Experience Scale. It also has a name. This helped them tease apart true near-death experiences from other moving psychological moments.
So another part of this for me is this information that's been done on reincarnation with kids that are 5 and under in Canada. Not to talk about that right now, but to say that it seems funny, like if you're going to be reincarnated, like when you're back at the source, it's like, what'd you get? Got a 7. What'd you get? I got a 3. I was gunned down in an alley. Try it again.
Reset.
I've tried it 8 times.
Yeah.
Well, just try it again. Okay. All right. Just comparing like your rating. What's your grayscale rating? Well, on average, it's been 9.
Don't we? Isn't it already a thing that certain traumatic type of memories and experiences get passed down through DNA and become instinct?
Yeah.
So aren't we all effectively kind of already doing that in a sense? We're just doing it at the DNA level.
Yeah.
We're passing off an OS that has just enough information. It was probably rendered when we were at our worst.
Yeah.
Thanks, nature.
Makes CRISPR awfully interesting now.
All of a sudden, right?
Yeah. Because for the first time, that process that's universal and been with us since time
is going to get altered.
Yeah.
Irreversibly.
Potentially.
Yeah, because you would pass that DNA on.
Gene drive. Remember, that's what that was. Where
that's right.
That.
Yeah, greedy.
Cut!
Right. Damn it. Interestingly, people who reported true near-death experiences seem to find it a pleasant experience. Remember, I said 0 to 1 to 10, 10 being I didn't really want to come back.
Right.
Even if it was also extremely intense.
Interesting.
Most people, almost 90%, reported that time sped up or slowed down, while 65% said it felt like their thoughts were coming and going rapidly. More than half of respondents felt like they were having an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
The participants' descriptions are particularly telling and a little scary. Ooh, you ready for some scary?
I'm ready.
Male, 28. Was that a colon?
Yeah, colon.
As I was fighting, my life started flashing before me in my head. I felt like my soul was being pulled out of my body. I was floating and was lifted up in the air after a few moments. I felt like I was in an enormous tunnel of darkness, and at its end, there was the brightest white light I have ever seen. I remember that my dead relatives were at the gate,
Yep.
including my maternal grandmother.
Remember that I said they're always, before you get to the light, you meet people, and at first they're people that you know in your family, and then they become people that you feel are you at the same time. Like you lose your identity, and then you go to the light.
Everything he describes here, okay, up into the part of dead relatives, everything before that is what it's like to get choked out.
Yeah, well.
No, I always tap out, so I've never. But it gets it's like, oh, okay, I'm done.
That's because the dead relatives come if they don't let up after you tap out.
Yeah. Thank God, Anthony. He's usually the one choking me to fuck out. It's
right.
usually with my own arm.
So if he doesn't stop, you'll see your dead grandmother.
He's
more
very
than
good
likely.
about going, all right, pussy. Okay, female 57. I was very young, and when I almost drowned, I saw angels, and they were singing the most beautiful music I'd ever heard.
Yeah, I don't typically hear that one.
No?
Haven't, no.
Male 46. I encountered a truly out-of-body experience where my eyesight and visual became incredibly abstract. For around an hour, I had no sense of self or my surroundings.
That's common.
That's really common.
Yeah, that's that whole stripping of your identity and being a part of everything around you and the other entities that you're passing. The realization
we're
that,
all one, man.
Yeah,
I'm so connected, man.
Yeah.
Kumbaya.
Yeah. Perhaps even avatars of a larger situation.
Yeah.
Only having identity as an avatar, only having experience in a linear time.
Yeah. And this is, so people understand, right? This is all
on past episode shows that we've talked about. I talked extensively.
And it's all just like conjecture. It's all theory. It's all real interesting sort of rabbit hole to go down.
Sure.
However, it has a lot of supporting type data that goes with it. So it's worth looking into.
All of the journals out in my car for OrcOR right now.
I know you keep threatening to bring those in and have them.
I've been reading them. I'm almost done with them. The second time I've read them, but I keep them with me.
Y'all sharpened up on it now? You're feeling like we need to do another OrcOR episode?
We can. Yeah, I mean, I'll just bring those in.
Oh, good Lord. You get to read the shit.
Sure, change. Yeah.
I'll be
working at the library.
I'll be like over here
with
one of them sticks, with a cigarette in it and a glass of cognac and my feet up. Be like, your turn. I'm going to sit over here and make snarky comments.
We still need to do the smoking show where we got the smoking
jackets and the cigar or the pipes or whatever. In front of the fireplace and everything. I have the chairs.
Yep. We need to do it.
The research provides a tantalizing window into an experience most people will never have. No, that's not true. Everybody's going to have a near-death experience right before they die.
Yes. And anyone who takes DMT.
Apparently, or any of those.
Ayahuasca.
Yeah. Which is just has DMT in it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Every living thing does, but they found some plants that had a good amount and are able to distill it into a situation where it will get you high.
But
it can be made by chemists.
The acacia bush also something that's supposed to be like super high?
I have heard that, but I'm not sure.
I should look that up sometime because I don't want to be propagating that and it's not true. Yeah. So anyway, don't believe me on that one. I think I've heard that. I don't know if it's actually true or not.
I've heard that acacia berries will help you lose weight, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, and there has to be some other chemical that stabilizes it to get past your digestive system, right, or something like that. I don't know.
Oh.
No, I watched a couple specials on it, and when it got to the whole people shit themselves for 3 days or whatever, I was like, yeah, I'm good. I'm all good with that. However, it doesn't explain why some people have near-death experiences and others don't. There are a few outstanding theories. One controversial idea is that the brain naturally produces N,N-dimethyltryptamine, DMT. During those experiences, like near-death experiences, DMT breakthroughs include feelings of separation from the body or entrance into an alternate realm. Scientists have noted these similarities before, but there is no direct evidence linking DMT and near-death experiences.
That is true. It is possible. It is in every living thing that's in your brain right now. It's possible that you could produce a crazy amount of it in
Isn't it like your pituitary gland or
I don't know.
Or something like that?
I don't know where it's located, but I know that it's in the brain, and I know that it could be secreted on a near-death experience, and maybe that's what gives you the high of what you're thinking. But consider, however, that just because everybody gets high doesn't mean they're going to have the exact same experience, but everybody universally does. So even if the brain is causing DMT to flood itself during death, then why is everybody's high or their trip or their experience the same if there's not something universal beyond death as universal as death?
What if it's just what happens when you pour water in the computer? Like, it all looks the same because it's one giant short circuit of the brain, so it all kind of just comes out the same way.
But even that,
and it's nothing more than a physiological thing.
But even that metaphor implies that somebody created the computer that's just as substantial as the computer itself.
Oh God, yeah, right down this rabbit hole.
I'm just saying.
Well, that's the other thing about the whole orco. Is it doesn't exclude any kind of acceptance of deity.
Yeah,
it's not like it has nothing to do with that more than anything, right?
It's very scientific proof of an afterlife, if nothing else,
or
some other kind of life.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, like, why would everybody's experiences with near death be similar unless there was something legitimately beyond death that was solid enough to give everybody the same experience?
Strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
I dig it. I that's why I'm on the roller coaster here with you, Bubba. I love this too, right? Meanwhile, the researchers behind this study suggested a different explanation. In the study sample, people who had a sleep condition called REM sleep intrusions were 2.8 times more likely to also have a near-death experience. So people who get shit for sleep are more likely to have near-death experiences.
Maybe they'll explain further.
REM sleep is a period of the sleep cycle marked by vivid and intense dreams. The body also enters a form of paralysis.
Okay.
In people with REM sleep intrusion, those powerful experiences may happen while they're awake and can result in hallucinations or temporary paralysis. Taken together, the results suggest there's a connection between REM sleep and near-death experiences worth pursuing.
Okay, so this is true. Also, too, this is another thing that people should be aware of. This is shit they should know, right? Concerning this topic and what we're talking about. But the REM sleep pattern being interrupted is what causes somnambulistic behavior, or otherwise known as sleepwalking.
Okay.
Somnambulistic behavior, a somnambulist is a sleepwalker, right? And it's the reason that people sleepwalk is because there's a part of your brain that when normal people fall asleep, it keeps your body from moving. It paralyzes you. And this is how you're able to have dreams where you're doing stuff and your body jerks and stuff, but it's not jerking too much, right? Because if it does, you'll wake up, right? So you naturally keep that from happening. But in some people, it doesn't work, and it causes them to sleepwalk. And in some people, it's severely broken, and they do all sorts of things in their sleep, and they have no idea they're doing it.
Well, that's the whole Ambien. The medication, sleeping medication,
caused that to happen unnaturally.
Yeah, people were having all kinds of weird experiences and shit on
totally
that.
Asleep,
and still do. Yeah,
and it happens in normal life too. Now, there's a crossover in this mechanism in the brain and the object that's called a God helmet.
The Australian neuroscientist, whatever. I've seen that.
Yeah, it's got magnets.
He can also make you autistic and super good at math with it too.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I'm just thinking of micro implants in your brain that you can turn on that will temporarily make you good at math. You know, when we were talking about SpaceX putting or Elon Musk doing that. Anyway. Because there's magnetic resonance.
I shouldn't say he can make you autistic. He can simulate some of the effects of autism.
But they're doing it with
the neurological effects of autism.
But they're doing it with electromagnetism, right?
Yeah,
so
straight up.
You could implant a device
he can make you feel
in you.
Depending on which part of your brain that he excites, he can make you feel the presence of somebody else in the room, or a deity or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they can all
And in history, naturally, this has been linked in history to other phenomenon. For instance, it's in current history, it's been related to the alien abduction phenomenon. It's been suggested that this mechanism.
We should have Devlin look that article. Oh, wait, he fucking ain't here. Okay, never mind. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's been related to like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, right? Where people are paralyzed and they say the aliens come in their window.
Yeah, and there's always anal probing.
Well, but they're paralyzed; they can't move, right?
Right.
And then this has also been evidenced in wood carvings about succubuses in like the 16th century, in that area, 15th, 16th, 17th century. There's been wood carvings of succubus. They were a demon that came in the night, and they would sit on your chest, and you couldn't move, and they were there with you, and there was a presence in the room.
Right.
And so throughout history, this is something that's happened and stuff, and it is a part of the human condition, and it is universal. It doesn't
Interestingly,
matter.
nightmares, all of that kind of stuff is something that's part of the human condition. Yeah.
And all that can be changed with electromagnetic resonance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have this God helmet, and you're talking about the interrupting your REM sleep, right? The REM part is when you're the most active, when falling to sleep, and if that's interrupted and that switch is turned off that paralyzes you, you have all kinds of experiences from
and not necessarily
abduction.
Really good ones.
Yes, all
terrifying
kinds of
experiences.
Somnambulistic sort of experience.
I used to always have this dream that I couldn't walk, and it would. I mean, for years I'd have it. I would have it. I wouldn't call it a nightmare. It was more annoying than anything else, right? Because I would wake up like pissed. Because every time I needed to walk in my dream, I couldn't because my legs didn't work.
How often did you have it?
I used to have it consistently, like monthly, at least.
Like once a month?
At least. Then I read an article that said, or I Googled it. I was like, what is this? Why do I keep having this same stupid dream where my legs are like frozen? Mm-hmm. And then it explained that when you go to sleep, your body makes a chemical that basically paralyzes you, or sort of paralyzes you in a way. Because your heart still works and your lungs still, all this other stuff still works. But anyway, and that's what that is. And ever since I understood that, and often I guess this is what happens, you never have that dream again.
Yeah.
Since I recognize that, I'm asleep, or that's why my legs aren't moving. Oh, because I'm probably asleep. It like completely breaks the whole. It broke the whole cycle for me, and then I never had it again. This was like years ago.
And isn't it interesting that there are even different categories of dreams? Like there's reoccurring dreams, there's lucid dreams, there's prophetic dreaming, there's normal dreaming, there's nightmares. There's a lot of different categories that are universal, that everybody has.
I dream about work. I dream about like coding problems and things like that. There's actual times that I figure shit out and near sleep like.
Yeah, and those are states, the typical dreams. Those are the unabnormal dreams, those kinds that you're describing. It's much rarer to have a recurring dream, especially when you're older. It's much rarer to have a lucid dream. A lucid dreaming is connected to the interruption of the REM pattern in sleeping. It's a period where your body is in REM state, but your brain is active at the same time, but the paralyzation is engaged, and you're not in this somnambulistic behavior, right? And you're able to have control over the dream and dream what you want to dream.
I think we've talked about this before, though. My dreams are rarely interesting. The ones I remember,
and most people forget them.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's normal for
and
everybody.
The only time I remember them is if I'm woken up somehow, or like I said, when I figure shit out, it's like right before I'm going to sleep.
If you kept
it's like, oh shit, like I get it now, and then I'm fucking awake again.
If you was to keep a dream journal by your bed and read it again every night before you go to sleep, and like when you wake up in the middle of the night, write something down about what you were thinking when you woke up, you'd find that you have a bit more consistency to your dreams than you thought, and you would actually start having clearer dreams because you would read about your prior night's dreams before you go to sleep.
That sure sounds like a lot of work, dude.
That's not. No, you just do it with a recorder. You just get up in the middle of the night because you woke up and you think you got to pee, and you thought, well, I woke up because I got to pee, but you could have woke up because you were having a dream and realized you had to pee. And if you think about it for a minute, you might remember something that you would forget totally.
That's the other thing. I wake up a lot with memories that I was dreaming.
Mm-hmm. That you forget
and within
the next day.
No, not even that long, dude. Like I get it by the time I'm dressed, I'm like, what the fuck was I dreaming about?
Yeah. Dream journal. It'll help.
Yeah.
If you want to know, it's a very Freudian thing to care about.
I just wish I could have the memorable dreams of like, I don't know, like, the cool shit, like being able to fly and or, you know what I mean? Like superhero powers and stuff or whatever.
Well, my two lucid dreams, that I've ever had in my life. The first one, I gave myself the power to fly by drinking a potion that I found on purpose. It was really weird. It's very much like reading Roger Zelazny Amber novels when you say phrases like that. When you say it was a potion that I put and found on purpose in my dream. I knew it would be there, and I drank it, and I knew what it would do, and it did, and I did it. You know, it was a very. And then the second one, I decided that it would. Okay, because this opportunity doesn't come along very often when you have full awareness in a dream,
and
right?
You know you're sleeping,
and you know you're sleeping, you know you're dreaming, and you know you can change the world. You can change. It feels real.
Inception.
It really does. And so I want it to be in the back of a van full of guns and ammunition, and have a bunch of zombies attacking while riding around through the village of Amanda. And that's what I dreamed. Somebody was driving the van, and I was in the back firing guns at zombies that were coming at the van, and we just drove around, had some fun. And the thing is, with all the lucid dreaming, eventually that's the problem. You really, truly have so much fun that you literally wake yourself up. Like your body gets into such a chemically excited state that
then you're bummed, yeah.
Then you wake up and you lost it. And you can feel it. You can feel it going away. You can feel you losing that part.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the inverse of probably feeling like you're losing your stability or your mind. Right, like because you know what's going on, and you're just losing that other.
Yeah, it's like
the
tearing
aspect.
into reality.
Yeah, and you're coming back to reality, and it's like, damn, you can't hold on to it because the more mad you get, the more awake you get, and it's a losing battle.
Since the study was published, the researchers have also proposed migraine aura.
Oh, Jesus!
As a predictor of near-death experiences. The research is preliminary and hasn't been peer-reviewed, but the team suggests the findings lend more weight to their theory that REM sleep intrusion and near-death experiences are related.
I don't even know what migraine aura is. No doubt it's not been peer-reviewed. So if it's not been peer-reviewed, that means that one or two or three people came up with the idea, think it's a great idea, but nobody's has been told or understands the idea yet enough to say, well, I agree or disagree.
Yeah, who peer-reviews something this kind of out?
You would need to do it to give it any real legitimacy, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, it is just well-educated people, 1, 2, or 3 probably, that came up with a possibility.
Yeah.
And it may or may not even be a valid possibility until they run it by some other experts to make sure they weren't all just in a room smoking weed and being like, oh, man, that sounds like a great idea. That would totally work.
Let's publish it in a journal, man.
Yeah, dude. I just get some other people to sign on. We'll be published again.
This one comes from theconversation.com. I don't know the source. Archaeological discoveries are happening faster than ever before, helping refine the human story.
Moore's Law strikes again.
There we go. Right, because technology is making it easier and easier and easier to find this stuff. 3 easies, dude. Easier. Okay? That's a lot of easier.
Yeah.
In 1924, a 3-year-old's child's skull found in South Africa forever changed how people think about human origins. The Tong child, Taung, Tong. Our first encounter with an ancient group of proto-humans or hominins called Australopithecines was a turning point in the study of human evolution. This discovery shifted the focus of human origin research from Europe and Asia onto Africa, setting the stage for the last century of research on the continent and into its cradles of humankind. Yeah, they call it the cradle civilization, right? Is that?
Fertile Crescent.
Fertile Crescent.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the cradle civilization. I don't know. What is that? I don't know.
Well, that would be Africa. The cradle of civilization would be talking about where humans first came out of Africa, which is a theory that's up for challenge at this point. But the Fertile Crescent is in reference.
I think it's
to first ancest in ancient civilizations that popped up: Egypt, Samaria, and China.
Human beings, for as long as they've been on this planet, have moved all over it, right? I think that's settled at this point. It just depends on how deep you've got to dig and where to get lucky enough to find them.
Well, yeah.
But I think every time they find something that's older, they're going to dig deeper someplace else.
Or somewhere else.
And somewhere else, and they're going to find something even older. Because and it's possible that humans, we may find, kind of came through the same thing, same neck of the woods several times, you know, and they were running from, different cataclysmic events and all kinds of shit
and of
like
course,
that,
if
right?
you take the branches of the Neanderthals and the, I keep wanting to say the Nubians, but it's the, I know it's not said that way, but it's
Denisovans?
the Denisovans, yeah. I always have problems with that. The Denisovans, the Neanderthals, and then the Homo sapiens were all on the planet at the same time, and they all interbreeded. And every modern human carries DNA from all three of these.
From all three of these, yeah.
So in that sense, you might as well say that we did come from different places, and it wasn't just one place, right? But
it's also intermixed at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Few people back then would have been able to predict what scientists know about evolution today, and now the pace of discovery is faster than ever. Ever since the turn of the 21st century, human origins textbooks have been rewritten over and over again. Just 20 years ago, no one could have imagined what scientists know 2 decades later about humanity's deep past, let alone how much knowledge could be extracted from a thimble of dirt, a scrape of dental plaque, or satellites in space. Human fossils are outgrowing the family tree. In Africa, there now are several fossil candidates for the earliest hominin dated back to between 5 and 7 million years ago.
Bam.
When we know humans likely split off from other great apes based on differences in our DNA. Although discovered in the 1990s, publication of the 4.4 million year old skeleton nicknamed Artie in 2009 changed scientists' views on how hominins began walking. Rounding out our relatives are a few Australopithecines, including a bunch of fucking shit I'm not going to say, and early Homo, that reignited debate about when humans first began burying their dead. So there's 1, 2, 3 different species here. Oh no, 2 species. Perspectives on our own species have also changed. Archaeologists previously thought Homo sapiens evolved in Africa around 200,000 years ago. That's what you were saying, right?
Yeah, been recently challenged.
But the story has become more complicated. Fossils discovered in Morocco have pushed that date back to 300,000 years ago, consistent with ancient DNA evidence. This raises doubts that our species emerged in any single place.
Yep. And around 100,000 years earlier than the standard theory.
Right.
Yeah.
This century is
Let's not forget the hobbits.
Damn them hobbits. They're good people. There's legitimately existed, right? The century has also brought unexpected discoveries from Europe and Asia, from enigmatic hobbits on the Indonesian island of Flores.
Yep.
To the Denisovans in Siberia, our ancestors may have encountered a variety of other hominins when they spread out of Africa. Just this year, researchers reported a new species from the Philippines. Anthropologists are realizing that our Homo sapien ancestors had much more contact with other human species than previously thought. Today, human evolution looks less like Darwin's tree and more like a muddy, braided stream.
Of
just inner fucking all throughout history.
Fuckery throughout history. That's
just tons of fucking going on there.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Gosh, yeah. Makes me forget what I was going to say. I was thinking of all that fucking, and I completely don't even know what I was going to say.
Well,
what was the last thing you read?
Anthropologists are realizing that our Homo sapien ancestors had much more...
Okay. So I don't know if it's going to be one of the articles we talked about or anything like that.
I'm pretty proud of that, man. I knocked you off beam there.
I loved it, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to think about it again.
Listening, yeah.
There was a helmet that was found in the north part of the Black Sea. It was a Greek helmet, like a hoplite helmet.
Okay.
And that's the furthest any Greek artifact from ancient times has ever been found from the Aegean area, the Greek area. And people thought, well, they never got that far, but they did. And there's a lot of evidence. In ancient times, there was at least in one hemisphere, like Africa and Europe and Asia and all that was connected, even in ancient times. And that there was a barter token system that was in play in prehistoric times, right? In times where history wasn't written down, and you got to find fossils and stuff, right? Nothing definitive could be written down. But evidence exists that this happened. And then, of course, like in, I don't know, probably 30 years, 40 years ago, if you were talking with an ancient history professor, they might not have believed that the ancient civilizations had as much contact as we've been able to find out that they did. But along with that and all this DNA testing and stuff, we've also found out that predating the ancient period and the prehistoric period, there was already that network. So that network of human experience and culture exchange and barter had existed before written language, before an alphabet, and
by definition, it's kind of like I shouldn't say that.
Well,
that sounds a lot to like a civilization to me.
Well, and here we see that it started off that way.
But
That when one species went out into the world with the other species, that they all interbred. That there were still, for their level of experience, other creatures out there that had that same level of experience, right? There wasn't a huge amount of technological difference between the different hominid species.
It's going to disappoint a lot of people, you know.
Oh, maybe so, yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, Neolithic people had the ability to store meat in these deep pits that they were able to keep them cold in. They made jewelry. They made musical instruments, so had music. They made art, and all of these things. They had fire, right? These are all the same things that the hominids had and the Denisovans had. Like they had those. I would predict. We don't really know about the Denisovans. They're very, very new, and only 2 instances have been found.
Really recent, yeah.
Yeah, one's really recent. But presumably, the point being is that we didn't really start off in one place, right? That part that ended up being mostly us may have came out of Africa, but wherever those people went, they found people of common straight level of culture that they would run into and interbreed with. In fact, I mean, if they were too different in any cultural way, it would have been maybe more difficult, but they did. They interbreeded, and one gene came out on top. Is probably a more accurate situation to say here, is that the Homo sapien gene probably was more dominant than the Neolithic genes or the Denisovan genes.
Right. Denisovan
genes. I'll get it.
What happens if you take a pack of dissimilar dogs, for instance? You got Chihuahuas and Great Danes. I mean, all of them. Okay, and you just let them interbreed, intermix. You know, you put enough in so that you don't get all kinds of weird fucking your cousin stuff going on there. You know, don't they eventually unravel all of the specific breeding that made them and end up, if you just let them feral, so to speak, don't they end up back to more like a coyote or a wolf?
If you're just throwing them in with no thought, then eventually there would be a set of dominant genes that would revert.
That's what I'm
in.
saying.
Yeah.
And when could you recreate the species that they came from?
Sure.
The wolf would it devolve, or would the dominant
That's
species
actually
win
happened
out?
with coyotes and crows. Both have been seen in nature to develop a species and undevelop that species and go back to the original species.
So I would say that the alpha version of a dog is like like a timber wolf or something, like right?
Mm-hmm. I think so, yeah.
And the way that you take that you get back there is by intermixing and finding the dominant gene as much as possible. So, which is the opposite of what the human condition says. Like the human condition for a long time has been about these people are with these people and these people are with these people, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But animal husbandry has been around for centuries.
Yeah, but that's selective breeding.
I get it, but to understand that, don't you conversely have to understand that if you let this unravel, you end up back at the wolf?
Yeah, but mostly what they're trying to do is do it selectively, where just like the owner of the dogs can choose the breeds and how often he breeds them to try to get the dominant genes he wants out of them to create different breeds. That's what I guess the people's rationale behind it was, that if they paired up the traits that they wanted,
to pull out specific traits that they were looking for.
I mean, I think in any race
kind
or
of weird
society,
to think of humans as breed stock, isn't it?
Well, in any race or society that would want to do that. I mean, there's been various ones throughout history that's made that attempt. But see, now it's a
some
moot
of them
point.
very violently. Yeah.
Now it's a moot point, though.
Why? Because of this. Because of
CRISPR.
Anybody can be anything they want.
Yeah, they can switch things around, and we truly just have the beginnings of that technology. I mean, CRISPR's new, right? It's a new phenomenon, and it's only going to get better, and it's already good. So it's like,
we'll see, huh?
Yeah.
Many recent discoveries have been made possible by the new science of ancient DNA. Since scientists fully sequenced the first ancient human genome in 2010, data from thousands of individuals have shed new insights on our species' origins and early history. Yeah, there's so many people are taking DNA tests now, too. It's like a real thing, right?
I'm one of those people.
Yeah. One shocking discovery is that although our lineages split up to 800,000 years ago, that's a long time, modern humans and Neanderthals mated a number of times during the last ice age. This is why many people today possess some Neanderthal DNA, some more than others.
Yo, you Neanderthals are warm. You guys are big, thick, warm. I'm just going to cuddle up right here, and we got a baby.
Yeah. What happened there?
I was just warm.
And then all of a sudden, boom, pregnant.
Right, yeah.
Damn, you sneaky Neanderthals. Ancient DNA is how researchers first identified the mysterious Denisovans.
Yeah, Denisovans.
Who interbred with us and Neanderthals.
We all had a good time.
Everybody liked to have fun with a Denisovan.
Yeah.
Apparently. They were like, hey, man, I love everyone, man.
I can join anybody.
Yeah. And while most studies are still conducted on bones and teeth, it is now possible to extract ancient DNA from other sources like cave dirt.
Hey, somebody walked here 800,000 years ago. Let's find out who it was.
And 6,000-year-old chewing gum.
Yeah, they found some kind of birch, chewed birch or something.
It was weird, right? But it makes sense.
Yeah, you got the saliva out of it.
Turns out we're not all that different than these. We think we are. We're so evolved. Of course,
That's the thing about why I'm interested in history, because it's truly what you're saying is you're interested in the human condition throughout time.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's so interesting, is that we're not different
at all, really.
No,
huh?
no.
Same fears, same motivations,
same people chewing gum on the side of the road.
Rinse, repeat. Genetic methods are also reconstructing individual and family relationships and connecting ancient individuals to living peoples to end decades-long debates.
Yeah. Like the Philistine thing that we were talking about, for instance, that helped with that debate, or like me having so much Neolithic DNA, 99% more than anybody that 23andMe had tested. So, I mean,
you're literally a caveman.
Well, as far
close
as it could be. I mean,
pretty much as close as you can get today.
Yeah, I mean, all of that, even though I have 99% more Neolithic DNA than most people, it's only like 2% or less of your actual overall DNA. It's a really small portion of it. But
own that shit.
Sure,
okay.
Yeah. But I mean, my genetic testing for genetic illnesses came back completely clean with no
because you have
marker.
no predisposition for anything, right? Because your DNA is so fucking old.
Yeah, it had replicated
and
successfully.
Replicated so long. Yeah.
Yeah, well, then that didn't stop it, so it must be immune to that. Now, I don't know if that's why, with it being such a small portion. But then again, it only takes one gene to turn on or off a trait. Like another trait that I had, and that I don't know if was connected with that, was that they said I had the genes of an elite power lifter, and clearly I don't utilize that gene. But I do have denser muscles, like legitimately than most people do. And it gives me slightly higher blood pressure because the capillaries that bring blood to those muscles have to pump a little harder.
Have to work harder.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, they're restricted.
I don't have any special genetics when it comes to my vascular walls. They're the same as yours, right? So they're going to wear out earlier, and I'm going to have a stroke. That's probably how I'm going to die. Not like for real, right? Because I'm already on high blood pressure, right? So... a stroke it is. That's fine.
No, that's not fine.
Why not?
Because there's a lot of other solutions prior to that
Like a car wreck?
No. Things you can do, dude, that can help
I'm taking
stave
medicine.
off that stuff.
I'm
Right.
taking
okay.
medicine, yeah.
Exercise, diet,
Yeah, I need to
medicine.
exercise, yeah.
All that shit can help stave that shit off, right?
Yeah. And
Look at me.
apparently I'll respond very well,
Not that I'm
muscularly
Mr.
speaking.
Healthy over here, but
Well, more than I am. But the good news is my muscles will respond really well if I ever do decide to do that. Like genetically speaking, I'm predispositioned
right,
to be a bodybuilder.
you'll snap right back, yeah.
Yeah.
You see
Oh,
you all
and you were saying that just
like
today.
jacked up and shit, right?
Well, you
What's
were
that?
saying that just the 2 years ago. I had the job walking around all the
That's
time.
right, yeah.
Like, and it's true, man. Like just a little bit of walking, I trim down, man.
Yep.
It goes away. But if I sit on my ass, man, I just balloon up. Fucking Orson Welles out, girth out.
Rosebud. Is that even the right guy?
Yeah,
That's the right guy.
yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if I missed the reference.
No, I was
there.
thinking, the French champagne.
The applications go far beyond humans. Paleogenomics.
Paleogenomics.
It is paleogenomics.
Yeah, that's
that's
what I got, man. I got the paleogenomics.
I was putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Is yielding surprising discoveries about plants and animals from ancient seeds and skeletons hidden in the back rooms of museums. There you go, Eric Smith. There's your museum job. Like
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
Let some other person dig it up. There's all kinds of shit we
Yeah.
can learn from what we already have.
That's right.
Does that? No. Is there an
Yeah.
argument then that based on until we should stop digging shit out of the ground until we classify and really study everything we already have dug out of the ground?
No, I think you should just keep.
Because isn't it
stocking
better
up.
preserved if you leave it alone and dig it up later?
Mm-mm. No.
No. But they're Göbekli Tepe. They're reburying,
Well, they
right? Am I right about that?
I don't know. I didn't hear that.
Maybe I'm making that up. Man, it may be a conspiracy theory or something.
No, I think you're just confusing it. They buried it in ancient times. It was a really early, almost.
You're right. No, they're leaving portions of it buried
because
so that later excavations with better technology will excavate those virgin sites.
and it was purposely buried by the people that created it. When they got done with it, they buried it.
Over and over again. It wasn't like they just did this once.
Yeah, but the last time was still in ancient times.
Mm-hmm.
So it had been buried since then. But the reason why I don't say that it's not safe, that it's more safe in the museum, just like Indiana Jones, it belongs in the museum, is because it's actually better.
Men.
Yes. It's better because inevitably it could get stolen if somebody came out and dug up something if they knew where this place was, right? Nobody was guarding it and nobody was watching it.
That's the liability, right?
Yeah, well, that's one of the liabilities. Another liability is
I think Göbekli Tepe, they're literally putting concrete over top of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that if they're going to try to preserve it. Because you know who found Göbekli Tepe?
Some German dude, right?
No, that was just a
farmer.
farmer.
I mean, that was the guy that actually was the archaeology. I'm sorry. That was a farmer. You're right. So it was a rock that he was trying to get rid of out of a field. He just kept digging, and the rock just turned into like a monolith.
You know how the Nag Hammadi Library was discovered? A tourist on a camel. The camel broke through a portion of the earth below and broke its leg and got stuck there, and they had to come out and get it and pull it out. When they did, they found out that it fell in through this area that had this library, this cache of Gnostic scrolls that they had never ever seen before and only had heard of in some cases.
Wow.
And so a lot of this shit, this is the way the Dead Sea Scrolls were found and the caves of Qumran.
Somebody threw a rock, right?
Yeah,
and heard a jar break, and I was like, wait, what was that?
Yeah, he was a kid, and he was looking for goat dung because they start fires with it. And he was throwing rocks in the caves because he had heard that there was jinns in the caves, and he would
scare him out or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
and he broke a pot, and it sent up all of these flakes of parchment, and it looked kind of like gold dust, and he thought it was a jinn coming out, right? And then later on, he found out it was paper, and he took the majority of what he found back for the fire, since he was looking for chips to start fire with anyways. So they burnt a lot of it before they even considered thinking about that it might give them money if they had the right people.
Right.
So a lot of this stuff is found by accident and trampled on or stolen or blown up, or, so if you can get it out and get it in a museum, in cases just like this, it can be preserved for decades, and still somebody can come back and
right.
take a look at it
and relearn new information from all of this
and
stuff.
they categorize it and draw it and make pictures of it and sometimes replicate it so that if something happened to that piece itself, they would still have records of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. I'm sold. Take it up and put it in a museum. DNA is not the only molecule revolutionizing studies of the past. Paleoproteomics, the study of ancient proteins.
Tasty, good stuff. Ancient bacon was good.
Can determine the species of a fossil, and recently linked a 9-foot-tall, 1,300-pound extinct ape, 1,300-pound extinct ape that lived nearly 2 million years ago to today's orangutans. Interesting. They used to be a lot bigger.
They say everything was bigger back in ancient prehistoric times because the oxygen
level was higher.
Yeah.
Dental calculus, the hardened plaque that your dentist scrapes off your teeth, is particularly informative, revealing everything from who was drinking milk 6,000 years ago to the surprising diversity of plants, some likely medicinal, and Neanderthals' diets. Calculus can help scientists understand ancient diseases and how the human gut microbiome has changed over time. Researchers even find cultural clues. Bright blue lapis lazuli. What the fuck is that? Lazuli?
Lapis lazuli. It's like a mineral that's really blue. A lot of times you can get jewelry out of it. It's a semi-precious.
Of course you know. Trapped in medieval nuns' calculus led historians to reconsider who penned illuminated manuscripts.
Yeah, you can make ink out of it too.
I get it now.
There's like a deep blue. It was really nice. It looks just like that if you'd powder it. You can do all sorts of good stuff with it.
Lipid residues trapped in pottery have revealed the origins of milk consumption in the Sahara and showed that oddly shaped pots found throughout Bronze and Iron Age Europe were ancient baby bottles.
Well, what do you know?
That makes sense, right?
Got to have a baby bottle to be got a baby.
How do they do it? Just throw a boob in that kid. Researchers use collagen-based barcodes of different animal species to answer questions ranging from when Asian rats arrived as castaways on African-bound ships to what animals were used to produce medieval parchment or even to detect microbes left by a monk's kiss on a page. Smoochy woochy. Big data is revealing big patterns. Yeah, of course they're going to be using big data. LiDAR, we've talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
Ground penetrating radar, that's getting huge.
Good stuff.
Yeah, because you can find stuff without having to dig it up first, right? So less strip mining. The only reason I'm blowing through this is because we've been on an hour and 20 minutes here coming up. So
that's good, yeah.
So, anyways, new connections are raising new possibilities. These advances bringing researchers together in exciting new ways. Over 140 new Nazca lines, ancient images carved into the Peruvian desert, were discovered using artificial intelligence to sift through drone and satellite imagery. With the wealth of high-resolution satellite imagery online, teams are also turning to crowdsourcing to find new archaeological sites.
Boy,
I heard that some kid found one, right? It was like, hey, that's a thing in the jungle right here because...
Yeah, man. Eric Von Daniken and Giorgio Tsoukalos is going to love the extra...
Nazca lines?
Yeah.
I think, didn't they figure out that those all just point towards water?
That was one of the suggestions. I don't know if they've definitively shown that.
Okay.
I have heard that, though.
The Open Science Movement aims to make this work accessible to all. Scientists, including archaeologists, are sharing data more freely within and beyond the academy. Public archaeology programs, community digs, digital museum collections are becoming common. You can even print your own copy of the famous fossils from freely available 3D scans, or an archaeological coloring book in more than 30 languages.
Yes, but like with everything,
be a thing, huh?
Beware of what you have. A lot of digital copies aren't exact copies. For instance, Patton's personal diary in the war, there's the digital copy that they have on display at the museum is not an exact copy of his actual physical diary.
Okay.
There's been changes made. Some of it looks suspiciously like they were trying to cover up certain things, like when people were murdered. When they were prisoners already and they weren't supposed to be murdered because they had surrendered.
Oops.
and
yeah, that's a war crime, right? Even back then, I think it was.
Yep. Stuff like that has been changed, and it, as an example. And there's been some revisionist history concerning, other things in World War II, like dropping the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There's been, I won't go into the details, but there's been, like, COSI pulled an exhibit that suggested the reality when World War II veterans protested against that reality as not being a possibility.
Like it didn't actually happen.
Well,
kind of thing, or?
No. Specifically, then it was that we didn't have to drop the bomb. There was about 5 or 6 other ways that would have ended that same war with no more casualties than would have been the way that we did. And any of those could have been used, but they had the bomb, and the president himself didn't give the order to drop the bomb. They're not exactly clear on who it was, so it didn't go through any proper channels or anything like that. It looks pretty much like they had it and they wanted to test it out, and they used it. They could have done other things to stop this war in the way that it still stopped. When they dropped the first bomb, experts were sent out by the emperor to see if it was like a normal bombing where things caught on fire and it just burned everything to the ground, or if it was a nuclear weapon. And the experts came back and told him they don't have a nuclear bomb. That's not what it was. And then they dropped another one, of course. And even then they didn't want to surrender, but eventually they did, largely in part because they thought that Russia was going to back them, and then Russia actually invaded them on our behalf, and that was pretty much the nail in the coffin that made them give up. It wasn't the atomic bombs. In the end, it actually did even make them give up, and so they really didn't need to be used.
We got to have that professor.
We do, sure.
Because this is some deep stuff, man.
Yeah. But anyways, that's the thing was America today and then, and especially the veterans, felt that it should have been done, because look what they did. They came in with Pearl Harbor and just attacked innocent people and things of that nature, right? And so it seemed like retribution. And it felt like retribution, and a lot of people backed that happening for those reasons, and don't want to hear that it didn't have to happen and that it shouldn't have happened, and they don't want to hear that it was wrong that it happened when they gave their lives, essentially, or know people that did, in the war.
Loved ones, immediate family members in a lot of cases,
defending freedom, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they got a legitimate complaint. I'm not begrudging how they feel, man. I get it. But it's just examples like that. That's 2 examples of how revisionist history can happen for reasons where it's true that the victors write the history. It's hard to get to factual history. Some of the only factual history you ever get is this ancient shit, because there's no propaganda behind it. You're just totally going off facts.
It definitely doesn't have a dog in the fight, so to speak, of anything that's incendiary or inflammatory.
Modern history, it's harder.
Or a lot less, anyway. Yeah, it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, you got to distinguish between, there's more source material, but and on this end, on the ancient end, it's more about speculation. That's easier to do as a historian because you're studying humans and how they react throughout history. So it's kind of easier to put yourself, still as a human, back in these periods, right?
Yep.
But the power struggles of the modern history and the amount of information and disinformation and credibility of information actually, in my opinion, makes it more difficult, because you're doing less speculation and more culling of the information, trying to find the core of what actually happened. And that's like the professor that we were talking about. He specializes in the Watergate, and he's they gave away this book at the library, and I found it. And I gave it to him because I'm like, man, you got to have this. And he's like, you know how many times I've checked that out of the library. Thanks for grabbing that. He didn't know. And his wife was working there. And I was like, okay, well. And but it's like literally, the book is like this thick, and it's a minute by minute, like day, date, year, time to the minute of events that occurred in a chronological order, and it's just a thick, giant book of the chronological events of Watergate from the beginning to the end. I'm like, that in and of itself is awesome. I don't know if I would ever read it, but Jesus Christ, that was just like a Bible.
That's insane, right?
So
someone put that together, or probably a team of people put that together.
But imagine how difficult it must have been if there's that much information that they condensed into a timeline. They must have waded through tons of information and had to decide what was relevant and what was salient and what wasn't.
Yeah, because you can't. How far out do you go on events that are happening?
Yeah,
how associated are they to this? Before you go, okay, that doesn't count.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do you pinpoint
Degrees
exact
of
times and
separation,
stuff if people argue about it? Or don't know or can't recall. So yeah, it was interesting, but good stuff.
All right, Bubba, that's about an hour and a half, man. We're gonna have to cut it off here. Like I said, we don't have any shout outs or anything. We didn't have to do anything like that tonight, right? So I'm gonna
shout out to the little people in the Civil War back to the colonial times.
That's right, damn it, who are underrepresented in history.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's get that fixed, folks.
Well, it's interesting. I can't help it. I'm interested in it. I'm truly, honestly interested in it. I mean, if I had the time, I would do some research on it and maybe write a paper on it.
You should.
I don't have the time right now. Maybe when I go do my master's
in the
fall or something, maybe I can work it in, just like I did with the D&D thing with the thesis.
Satanic Panic and all that.
Yeah. You gotta follow your heart.
That's it, baby. That's all it's about, right?
That's right.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Check us out at www.noshitcast.com. That's KNOWSHITCAST.com. Make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons. Give us a share. We'd greatly appreciate it. Keep those comments coming. We dig that stuff, and the discussions that are happening down there in the YouTube comment sections and things is really, really cool. So we'll catch you all next time. Again, thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, shout out to Nikita.
Nikita?
I believe that's her name or how you say it.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, that's it?
Yep.
All right, thanks for listening, everybody. Catch y'all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Nikita.
Yeah, she